Politics today is pro wrestling, but the Dems and Repubs in front of the public tell how they hate each other and how they're different, but as soon as the cameras go off, they're all going out to dinner together, they're all buddies cutting deals. It's just like pro wrestling.
Are you suggesting professional wrestling is fake?
I'm suggesting politics is fake.
Woo, welcome. You have now entered Mad Warfare, mutually assured distraction, where we explore the weird, terrifying, and sometimes hilarious ways war is fought today, and how we can all protect our minds before we go too mad to find them.
Oh my!
Dangerous, pattern. Dangerous, pattern. Dangerous,
How
pattern.
can you talk if you haven't got a brain?
Dangerous, pattern. Dangerous, pattern. Dangerous, pattern.
Reminder, the opinions on this show are ours alone, and honestly, we might regret some of them later. They don't reflect our employers, past, present, or imaginary. This is a playground of wild ideas, so please, don't take anything here too seriously, unless it's genius. Then it was definitely intentional.
We're here, and I'm still Sean.
I'm still Jocelyn, I think.
Welcome again to the Mad Warfare podcast, episode 2.
Pew, 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 pew. Today, we're talking about professional wrestling.
What? Sean, why are we talking about professional wrestling on a warfare podcast?
We promised unconventional warfare. That quote you heard at the top of the show was from former professional wrestler and former governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura.
Oh, I love it so much. Such a chef's kiss moment. Pro wrestling is fake? No. Politics is fake. Just boom.
Pro wrestling, you hear all the time. When they say it's fake or phony, they want to make it sound like the whole thing is fake. But just like politics, that's like saying all of politics is fake. In politics, there's a lot of what we show you in terms of front of the camera, kind of spectacle to the public. And then there's what is actually happening behind the scenes.
Are you suggesting that I'm not who I say I am?
Like they're scripting a narrative that they want us, the public, to see.
Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Which is where, kids, cognitive and unconventional warfare comes in.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Because when you can influence what people think and believe, you don't even have to fire a single shot.
You have the saying, Sean, if you want to understand human psychology better than academic psychologists, you need to understand pro wrestling, right? Bold claim.
I stand on my business on that one. Wrestling really was my gateway to understand multiple aspects of cognitive warfare today.
Your gateway drug.
It's a hell of a drug.
And
Yeah.
you found this gateway drug when you were just a wee lad.
A little one. Yeah. I had the big wrestling Hulk and Goldberg dolls.
Who do you think you are?
That's Hulk Hogan!
When WWF, now WWE, became a publicly traded company, that was the first stock that I ever bought.
So you were already betting on this being a winning game. Right. It's your gateway drug to human behavior. And you were noticing these like really big effects that it was having on the world, at least in America, right?
Even in terms of entertainment, professional wrestling has been really at the forefront. At least in the US, one of the drivers for people buying TVs in the 1950s was to watch Gorgeous George, fantastic heel.
Gorgeous George. George has been silently credited with establishing network television as a viable entertainment medium.
He's like Taylor Swift level of influence.
Oh, I mean, he had beautiful, gorgeous golden hair as well.
Isn't that beautiful?
Wrestling has always just been really ahead of the curve in media adoption. Big pioneers in terms of the pay-per-view times, the streaming service at the time. Wrestling has always been a leading indicator on how people consume media. It's a leading indicator on how you're going to see it in other entertainment. It's a leading indicator how politicians will kind of adopt these different mediums. And it's just overall a masterclass of crowd psychology. How to make them cheer, boo, scream, chant. Putting that online, like, I hate what happened, like working the crowd, working the marks. You'll hear that term, a little foreshadowing on that.
And when you hear that sound, it means we're dropping a wrestling term we'll define later in the episode that you can apply in human psychology.
This all sounds like a political rally.
Let me tell you something, brother.
I say politics is downstream from all that. Wrestling's influence on politics is undeniable. Of course, in terms of Trump being Battle of the Billionaires against Vince McMahon.
Hey, look at this! Donald Trump! Donald Trump! Donald Trump! The hostile takeover of Donald Trump!
Vince McMahon at the time, head of WWE, married at the time to Linda McMahon.
And Linda McMahon, she ran small biz administration under Trump 1.0, and then in Trump 2.0, we get her as his pick for Department of Education, right?
Or you might remember her from the time she kicked her husband in the balls.
Linda rose from her chair!
That bridge between wrestling and politics, we just showed Jesse Ventura. That would be early 2000s, governor of Minnesota. Kane Glenn Jacobs, mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. Sorry, Kane, if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, I'm mayor, but that's not all.
Is Mayor Jacobs going to have to choke?
And even in Japan, a pantheon of Japanese professional wrestling, one of the top three, Antonio Inoki, he was in their version of the Senate for a number of years.
He had an infamous pro wrestling versus boxing match against Muhammad Ali, which was a precursor to modern MMA. On top of wrestling, Antonio Inoki was also a politician who managed to negotiate the release of Japanese hostages held in Iraq.
Yeah.
We have like professional wrestling to politics pipeline, global edition. And
yeah.
And this, you're also saying this connection from wrestling to politics goes way back, right?
Well, Abraham Lincoln is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Actually, there's this great story if you're talking about professional wrestling. Somebody was trying to cheat, again, like actually a real heel move, like step on Honest Abe's feet. Abraham Lincoln picked him up and choke slammed him.
Don't mess with him.
He wasn't having it that day, at least.
And speaking of people not to mess with, we will be bringing on special guest and wrestling legend. He's a former WWE star, 6-time hardcore champion, a man who's battled in the ring and now trains the next generation of champions. One of the greatest minds in the business. And if anyone knows how to get in our head, wink, it's Al Snow. Oh, wait.
Is he in the waiting room?
Yeah, he is.
Bring him on in. Oh, my goodness. How are you doing, sir?
I'm just fine. I've been listening to your very fascinating conversation.
You heard it? He was listening to it? Oh, my gosh. It's amazing to have you here, sir.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for including me and giving me the time.
By the way, I just have to say, I've never seen Sean this excited. So we're so happy to have you here.
I've been looking forward to engaging in the conversation.
So I'll be very quick in terms of why are we even here? Because we believe that winning wars is just not about winning that physical, kinetic fight.
Of course it's not.
And we're trying to help folks get it because we do want what's best for our nation of that. And then as it stands right now, since things are just so polarized and the topics are inherently political, and since they're political, people are afraid to touch it, it's just not something that's going to happen at this moment. We want citizens to know that, but we also want to arm them. And you'll see these folks, including me, adopt these kind of terminology from pro wrestling, but we're just a bunch of freaking marks. Nobody's actually reached out to pro wrestlers in our space to reach out and talk. So I don't know if we're opening up like a business opportunity later on for like, yeah, we actually should bring pro wrestlers to come into, like FBI or whatever.
That's a good idea. We'll take royalties. Yeah.
A little kickback.
Yeah.
So part of what we're doing is sharing terms with people they might not be familiar with in this world and giving them the lexicon they can use for everyday life and cognitive battles and protection.
We've now heard the term
mark a couple of times. For anybody who doesn't know what that means, how would you describe what that is?
A mark comes from the carnival days. So you've all been to everybody's been to a carnival or a fair.
Step right this way, friends. You can't go home without a permanent souvenir.
And the typical setup is that the main attraction is at one end of what we call the midway. Along that midway were games that were operated by the carnies.
We're natural-born carnies, Dad.
And then you always had your ticket booth placed way at the other end of the midway. The main attraction, and just so you know, department stores and grocery stores now emulate these.
They call it behavioral science, but it was invented in the carnival days. They knew it before.
Carney science.
If you've ever been there, you know, especially in the old days, the ticket booths were up a little higher, and that allowed the ticket taker to be able to look down in your wallet or your purse and see if you had money. The reason that's important is that if you operated the games, you all ate together and starved together. So the objective in every town every night was to make as much money as you could so that you could eat better and, you know, be more secure. So to that end, you don't want to bark at everyone, because if you bark at everyone, you're going to not get anyone, because you're going to turn the people off. You're going to get what we call a rube, a guy or a person who's going to come up and stand at the game and is not going to play. They're just going to take up space. And then that's also going to dissuade somebody else that might have money. So you're really wanting to focus on primarily those people who have money and try to attract them to the game, keep them there and have them play for as long as possible, i.e. building heat through doing so. So the term mark was, quite honestly, was a term to literally mark someone that you knew had a fair amount of money in their wallet or purse. So the ticket taker would look down, see the person's money, cash, and then would signal someone across the way. And they would either pick up some dust or they would have a piece of chalk and they would literally put a mark on that person. And then you would then devote your energy to trying to attract that person to the game and then try to keep them there, because the longer you kept them there with the belief and the desire that they put their money down, the odds would increase that they would win the big prize, which was the gimmick of the game. So there are two gimmicks of the game. The main gimmick is the prize you're selling. The second gimmick is how you win it. You then build the heat, the belief, the thought, the idea, and the desire to win that big prize.
Be honest with me. Is it actually possible to win this game?
If I like it, it is.
Hot dog, let's go!
You know, the two of you are there, and I go to you. I go, come on now, you know, she really wants that big bear.
I want that. Win that lamp.
Come on, you know. And of course, you're looking over, and she's got a smile, and you're like, God, I got to win it, because now I got to get over, you know. If I don't win it, it's going to kill me. So I build that heat and keep you on the hook as long as I can to pull as much money out of you as I can. So that and I've identified you as having money by placing a mark on you.
It's like how we get political donations. You get the richest, fattest wallet, keep it coming.
Yeah, that's it.
Come to dinner. Come to daddy.
Somebody stop me!
Yeah. Build the heat. Figure out what they want, what they really desire. That's the key. You have to figure out emotionally what's the button you're pushing, so that you know what to push to make them believe next time they'll have more likelihood of getting that emotional satisfaction.
Speaking of
emotional satisfaction.
Al Snow was not just a wrestler, but a visionary, creating the beloved character Head, an iconic part of wrestling culture.
Is it the head or head?
Head. They like to be referred, you know, they don't like to be referred to as an object. I mean, come on. I mean,
head, she. Sorry.
Don't ruin this for me.
Pardon me.
There's so many other personalities in there, and if you name one, you got to name them all. So that's a pain in the ass.
I was watching an interview of you talking about your idea behind this.
From Talk is Jericho highlights.
I was reading a book on abnormal psychology, and there was a case study of a woman who had schizophrenia and what they called transference disorder, where she heard the voices from inanimate objects, but she thought they were mentally ill, not her. And I found a styrofoam head.
And then somehow this light bulb moment came up.
Like, oh, I'm gonna start carrying this styrofoam head with me. And if anything happens that's bad, I'm gonna blame it. And I'm going to argue with it. The more I did it and the crazier I acted, the more it started catching on. And then it just took off from there.
And that became what maybe your biggest gimmick, if I'm using the terms right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The reason that it did was because it was me. I mean, it was real. In professional wrestling, people sometimes use the misnomer of calling us actors. We're not actors at all, because we're not playing a character. Everyone that has ever been really nominally successful in wrestling is directly because it's who they really are, just with an aspect of that personality turned way, way, way up when they walk through the curtain.
Would you believe this if you hadn't seen it?
So The Vince McMahon you see on TV is basically a caricature of Vince. It's really Vince when he goes out there. Steve Austin's really Steve Austin too, but just amped up, turned way high.
Give me a hell yeah!
You know, for me, at the time I developed the head and that relationship, I had a lot of unfortunate frustration career-wise. That was all my, my own doing and mistakes. I didn't identify because I was too busy pointing the finger at everyone else but the one person that had created it. And I gave voice to that by the interactions to that. So for the audience, it was real. And I tell young performers, and this doesn't matter what walk of life, what location you're in, but more so, it's more important in politics and entertainment. The absolute essential thing that you have to develop is one, an identity that the common person can describe to their friends and family in a sentence or less. Mm-hmm. Every single person that you've ever admired in entertainment or politics, you've been able to turn to your friends and family and go, you got to meet this person. They are A, B, C, D. If it goes any further than that, it ain't going to work. Those people that you find that are successful, it's because you're able to describe them in a sentence or less. The second most important thing is that you have to convince them and make them believe in who you are. If you get somebody to believe in who you are, they will believe in and I mean absolutely anything you say or do. I can prove it. I've made a very good living making millions of people believe that I can knock another human being out with a plastic head. I can't. I can't even knock a toddler out. I've tried, and all that results in a very uncomfortable conversation with their parents who are now wanting to call the cops because Billy's on the floor.
I'm gonna smack you.
And I'm like, yeah, call the cops on your son. He's not putting it over. So he's not doing it.
There's a lot of toddlers that deserve this.
They do, especially in the airports. And they just or out in the restaurants. I mean, your kid's running around. He's free game. So.
Oh my gosh. Do you think in terms of the identity for you and then having folks believe that those are the two keys to getting over in terms of that terminology? And then if so, are there other qualities?
You have to get over or get heat. You first have to be made. To make someone means to make someone believe in you.
Okay.
They have to believe in you, because if they don't believe in you, there's no way I can get you over, and there's no way I can get heat on you.
And what's get over?
So the term get over is to make you want to be me, live vicariously through me. And that's the most important and most valuable thing. As far as wrestling is concerned, that's where we make our money. If we don't have someone who's over, then we never get heat. I'll give you a good example. And it's the best analogy I can come up with so that it make you understand. Now remember, heat, it's not anger, it's what it is a want, a need, a driving desire. So if you want to read a book, you want to see the next episode of a television show, you want to see a movie, I always will go, well, that's got heat. You've made somebody want, desire to do it. So for instance, here's why it's so important to get over, and then you'll understand what over really means. If we were to walk out right now outside of wherever you guys are at in your lovely separate spaces, and you walked outside, the three of us together, and we see somebody setting fire to a car. Now, keep in mind, this is not your car, all right? This is just a random car. And be honest, please, don't try to fool me, because I know what your reaction would be. What would you do? It's not your car. What would you do? And be honest.
I would look, holy shit. My wife would probably record, but again, I was just like, okay, that's
you're not going to get directly involved.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not. Yeah.
Neither one of you are.
Yeah.
You know why? It's not your car. That's just human nature. Now, we walk outside and we see somebody setting fire to your car. What are you going to do?
Oh, okay, yeah. What the fuck? Yeah.
We're trying to stop them or at least get involved in something.
Yeah.
We walk outside. We see somebody setting fire to your car with your family and your dog in it.
Oh, geez.
Oh, they're dead.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Because those folks would be personally important, to life. Those are most important things.
So my objective whenever I do anything whatsoever is to try to make my hero or my babyface. I need to, and he needs to also be on the same page and do anything and everything we can to at least make him the audience's car. If he's not their car, no matter what your heel or your antagonist does to your protagonist, the audience will not care because it's not their car. They are not invested. The home run where I really am able to hook you and I'm really able to draw money is that I've been able to make my protagonist your car with your family and your dog in it. Because now if I do one thing, just one simple thing to your protagonist, I didn't do it to him, I personally did it to you. And that's where you'll pay. So what we have to get you to do is to relate to who we are, and our intent and our consequence, so that we can then do everything we can to make the babyface, the hero, your car, or your car with your family and your dog in it, so that we can now put heat on the heel, a want, a need, a desire to see not your babyface win, but you ultimately triumph over the heel. And we have to have a heel that you kind of find somebody in your life that you relate to, that you know is just as much of an asshole as that guy.
You're an asshole!
Or as bitchy as that girl.
As if.
And does it for the same petty, selfish reasons that the person in your life does.
And again, that some of the best descriptions of the aims of have influence, or if you're doing economics, understanding demand signals that you can then supply. It could be used in politics. It could be used in terms of, like, you want people to think Ukraine is a burning car, or you want people to think whatever sort of conflict that you want the U.S. to intervene in some way is that burning car.
Yeah, they do the same thing.
Yeah,
do the exact same thing.
Just not as well, and that's why we would bring you in as an expert.
I don't know if I'm an expert. I'm not a bat in 1,000 myself.
Well, if you're not, who do you think is an expert in audience psychology or this? I use the term wrestling psychology, but I know that's a little bit different.
It's so different. Storytelling. And for wrestling is the physical art of storytelling. So all of our storytelling,
great quote.
When we're in the ring, it's the physical art of storytelling. All we're doing, as far as we're trying to manipulate the psychology to set the stage, so you now never have to ask the death question of why. Once anyone in your audience asks why is this happening? Why are they doing that? Why are they not doing this? Once they do that, you've lost them. Once you've lost them, then it's very difficult to get them back. And you've got to know how to sense it and be in the moment, and be able to capitalize on just finding that little emotional button and going, oh, there it is, and then starting to push it. So you always set the stage, you always educate your audience. And then once you have them educated and they know the whys, then you start to explain why it's important to them and what they get out of it, and emotionally, more than anything else, emotionally, what they get out of it.
It's something we've talked about this, Sean, but to do a lot of storytelling, narrative strategy workshops, and it boggles my mind that there's so many people in marketing and sales still that are just like, why is storytelling important? Or why are we talking about emotions? And one of my favorite quotes is Jill Bolte Taylor says, we can think of ourselves as thinking creatures that feel, when really we're feeling creatures that think. And hearing the way you're talking about all this is just extremely helpful in something I think everybody should know. It's like, we are moved by emotion. And if somebody's captivated your emotion, good luck getting out of it.
You'll do more. Your brain, in my opinion, operates on two things, and that's emotional pleasure and emotional pain. And you'll subject yourself to ungodly amounts of physical pain to avoid emotional pain, to keep that state of emotional pleasure. That's why people go to the gym, because being overweight or being out of shape is so emotionally painful. That's where body dysmorphia comes from, because it's emotionally painful to not be in that ideal physical state. And then so they get an emotional pleasure from that. They get so much emotional pain that they'll endure or undergo or create a sickness to achieve it.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. I'm sure you've heard some folks not in the professional wrestling business talk about terms like kayfabe or
kayfabe. So you understand what that is. Fact for your audience. So what I mean by that is I've sold you who I am.
Mm-hmm.
You now are emotionally invested. I'm not ever going to insult that or make you feel like you've wasted your investment. That's going to ruin things for it. I know you know that I'm not all I'm selling you when I go to the ring is I'm telling you who I am, and I'm selling you my intent, and I'm telling you the consequence thereof. That's it. I'm not selling you anything else. If you can't believe in me, you're not going to believe in anything I do. You're not going to believe in my intent, and you're not going to believe in the consequence. So I'm not going to, I'm going to try, and that's where the word kayfabe came. Kayfabe was just a signal word, was all it was so that we never violated that trust with the audience. So, you know, when I was really prominently featured on TV on a weekly basis, you know, and it was awkward. I mean, I'll be honest, but I traveled with the head, and, you know, and I would go to dinner by myself with the head, go in a restaurant, get a table for two. I'd buy dinner. I'd argue with them about them trying to watch the figure that they didn't have because they weren't eating, you know, and I'd get asked to I'd get asked a lot of times to leave, you know, the restaurant. You know, they'd be like, well, you're making the other customers uncomfortable. You know, they're making us uncomfortable. So who's going to win? You know? They're like, well, we're going to call the cops. I go, well, you won. I'm got to go. So, you know, I go to the rental car counter. You know, we'd argue about where they were going to sit in the car. Just, and the reason I did that was because, one, if you're a fan, you believe. Now, if you're not a fan, and 3 weeks from now, you happen to see me as you're flipping through the channels, walk out on TV, and you go, holy crap, and you yell at your wife in the kitchen or your husband, and you're like, hey, that lunatic we saw at the restaurant's on TV, come here.
Have a head in your bag right now, and I'm just wondering.
Now I've got an audience.
Yeah.
And now you believe me, and you continue to watch me. Because my one job when I walk through the curtain is not to wrestle. My job is to ensure that if you're at home, you never turn the channel. And then I can ply you into motivating you, which is the hardest job to do, into getting so emotionally connected that you then decide to leave the comfort, safety, and security of your own home, get in your car, drive to a building, pay to park, which is ridiculous, and then pay a large amount of money to get into that venue, to sit in a seat, let's be honest, that none of us want to sit in, around people none of us want to sit around, to eat food none of us want to eat, to pay prices we would never pay anywhere else, to watch me because you believe in me. That's my job.
There was a time when pro wrestling was harder to get into than even the mob, and there was that because there was that protection of exactly kind of like what you were talking about just there.
Yeah, not violating the law. Like another term within wrestling is a work or worker, and a work is basically my ability to work you, make you believe a lie. There's only one singular lie in wrestling, and that is that we know who's going to win and who's going to lose. That's the only lie we're telling. Everything physically that happens in that ring is quite 100% real. It all hurts to some degree or another. It's the intent that I'm trying to communicate to you, to convince you of. And the more you believe in me, the more you believe in my intent, the more you believe now in the one singular consequence of anything that I do in the ring, which is that the other person loses. And now all the soap operatic stuff that we do backstage of, you know, the guy feeding me my dog, that's to add more personal gravitas to the consequence of the win or the loss. Now it's not just about winning or losing a match, it's about getting justice. If I'm sufficiently over with you, I'm your car, and then I win, that's what motivates you to leave your home. I explain this to the younger performers. My job is not to wrestle. My job is to motivate you to invest your time, money, and effort to come and see me. And that's a movie actor's job, is not to act. Arnold Schwarzenegger was not the most spectacular actor.
Bullshit.
I know that may be a big surprise to a lot of people, but he was adequate at best, but he didn't get paid to act. He got paid because lots of people would go see his movies. He got elected as governor because he was able to understand how to motivate people to leave their home, drive to a building, stand in a booth, and punch a button. And that is because he was their car.
Like we can learn a lot about getting voters to boost from that.
And to your point, to your thing about stories, this is just my own personal opinion.
Feel free.
In regards to life. I think that your life is a story. Everyone that comes into your life is a story. Every event in your life is a story. And every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And why you mourn the end of one story when really all stories come to some end, and now it gives you the ability to go and read a new one. Because no matter how good the story is, when you finish it, what do you do with the book? Close it on the shelf and you move on to the next book.
Yeah.
And that has helped me a lot with that, with that outlook, is that because the one thing you guarantee in life more than anything else is everything's going to change. Nothing stays the same. So every story's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every relationship has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every job has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every part of your life has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Your life has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Your story. So why not go out and have as many experiences? Because personally, I'll tell you, I give this advice to everybody, especially the young ones. I guarantee you, I promise you, in 10 years, you'll regret more the things you didn't do than the things you did. I have no doubt about it. So why not go do stuff? Why are we all worried about making mistakes? How do you make a mistake? I don't even know what a mistake is. Really, I'm not being flippant. I mean, I really, seriously, because it's just another experience and a part of your story. Listen, the best way to live is to, by the time you get old enough, is to have enough experiences and memories that you can tell really good stories. I got plenty. And if you want to count mistakes, I got lots of those, but I got great stories from them.
I'm just blown away because this is why we reached out. I know folks in terms of my world, I hope they're learning because I feel like I'm learning a lot.
I'm making it up as I go.
So it's working like gang, but I'd love to hear your thoughts if you think there's certain fields that you're like, yeah, kayfabe's strong with them.
Because again, somebody has identified what an audience wants to believe and what an audience is willing to believe, and then they don't want to violate that. And that's the kayfabe. That's the protection. Is that because once let's face it, if you go to a restaurant and you don't have the experience that you expected to any degree, how willing are you to go back to that restaurant again and have that experience? Not. It took you one time. One time you did not get what you expected or what you bought, what you invested your time, money, and effort into getting and receiving. It's all the experience. It's not the food could have been great, but there was something about the atmosphere, whatever. You did not have that experience that you expected. You won't go back.
Yeah. So the one missed drop kick that the person still kind of backs out. Yeah.
If now the audience will not return. And for someone like for me, it's that because everyone can hit a home run at some point. If you got a bat and a ball, the odds are you're gonna at some point be able to hit a home run. Okay. Can you do it consistently? Like almost not 8 out of 10 times or 9 out of 10 times. You're never going to do it 10 out of 10, but 7 times at bat, you're hitting a home run. Well, that makes you an elite. That makes you Reggie Jackson. That makes you, Willie Mays. That makes you, what I mean? If you're Michael Jordan or Larry Bird, because it's not the ability to hit a slam dunk or a home run. It's the ability to do it consistently, time after time after time, because all it takes is that one time that the audience didn't get that experience. But they go, this guy, he's losing a step. He's not that good.
Do you see parallels there with how America sees itself?
Great question, Jocelyn.
Yeah, because if you go back through professional wrestling history, which I always find fascinating, and I hope you guys don't mind because I had to do a interview just a little bit ago with India. Give me just a second. I want to take off my lob.
And while Al is adjusting his mic, a brief message from our sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by, drumroll please, well, nobody yet. But dear listeners, with access to an ad budget, you can be our almighty Atlas, carrying the world on your shoulders and helping us get the Mad Warfare podcast off the ground by being one of our pioneering plank holder sponsors, which comes with special pricing for those brave souls who are willing to stick their necks out to be with us. It could be for your company. Maybe you have a book that you want to promote and you want us to give a shout out on that. Heck, we'll take family and friends who just want to have us read embarrassing messages just for a good giggle. We'll take them all in at this point. Reach out to us at our email address at the madwarfarepodcast@gmail.com. madwarfarepodcast@gmail.com.
Show us the money.
Please put that in there too.
Show me the money!
All right, back into the show.
So
you're good.
Here. We know it in wrestling. It has been around in the United States since the late 1800s, starting in the early 1900s. So basically, what you see is evolved, of course, but it's been in existence for over 100 years, over a century. It's always been a reflection of whatever society it's been in that period of time. Always. When you look just after World War II, the villains, they were all international, German, European, Japanese, they were all the heel. A lot of them were heels. When you go into the 60s, a lot of the heels were, bikers and hippies. And when you go into the 80s, you had the Middle Eastern heels, you had the Iron Sheik, you had the all-American superhero Hulk Hogan, larger than life, big, tan, muscular, blonde. And so it's always been very much a mirror to the society and the period of time that it's in at that time. So,
Is it ever not just a mirror, but almost a premonition?
I think to a degree, because that's maybe, I don't think we're nearly on the level of The Simpsons, but by any stretch of the imagination.
Like them predicting President Trump in the year 2000.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
But, the attempt by what we call the booker, the person who has the vision, is to always, you're always trying to think further out and further ahead, and what are the dictates of the audience that doesn't even realize it themselves, what their wants or their desires are, and so that you can anticipate them and then meet those at the right moment in time before they even realize that they wanted it that way.
And a big thing in terms of information operations, marketing, they'll call it measures of effect or measures of performance. But how do you know if your message is working or not? What are the main metrics wrestlers will use to be like, is it working or not? Is it purely like crowd volume, or is it ratings? Is it how much merch if you're at least a face? Those kind of metrics to be like, okay, taking the temperature of the audience of what they like, what they see in a hero. I'd love to hear more about that.
It's all of those. The number one question that you should ask as a wrestler is, what's the house? And you should always gauge your success on how many people paid to see you. At that right there, that more than anything else is going to tell me, and then who, for me as the promoter, okay, who did the majority of this audience come to see?
Mm-hmm.
Because in wrestling in the past, not so much anymore, I guess, but in the past, the way it worked was the usual formula. The promotion got a third and the locker room got a third. And then whoever or whatever was the thing that drew the house was responsible for the majority of the people being there got a third of that third. So you always came in and the first question was, what's the house? And you wanted to know that. Now, for me as a promoter, one of the ways I can tell who drew most of that audience is, okay, who sold the most merch? Mm-hmm. You're not going to sell merchandise unless you're truly motivating those people to be the reason they showed up at the building in the first place. And then, of course, television ratings. And nowadays you can break it down into 15-second increments, I think, or even further. And you can see by those indicators as to who really is driving the bus as far as viewership, which, of course, a wrestling show is not a show. It's not a television show. I have this discussion with my podcast partner, Vince Russo, who used to be the head writer for WWF back in the Attitude Era. He never gets it, and we argue about it all the time. But I like arguing with him, so it frustrates me.
You want to hug it out? No, really? Let's hug it out, bitch.
A wrestling television show is not a television show. It's not like Game of Thrones.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
It's episodic. It's telling a story, but it is basically nothing more than a commercial to sell your product, and the product are the wrestlers. And the wrestlers' sole job is when they walk through that curtain is to use that time to motivate you to want to pay to see them. That's it. And that breaks it down. You know, television ratings and all of that are very important. And I'm going to watch those. I'm going to watch merchandise sales. And you ultimately, you're going to base your success on those same numbers, especially attendance, because that's the hard. I can get people to buy a product from their home. Let's face it, with the old television ads prove that. You know, I can
never forget it.
Mm-hmm. I can get somebody to tune in and watch a television show. It could even not be that good, you know, and they'll tune in if I market properly. But the hardest thing to do is to get someone to be willing to take some kind of physical action, leave the comfort, safety, and security of their home, and then go and actually purchase, be involved in, whether it watching or witnessing something or buying some kind of product off the shelf. That's hard. And that's a very different challenge. So you've got to be really smart about it.
How much collaboration goes on between you and the writers?
Well, for me, I'm pretty much the writer. You know, I have a guy that I basically every week, I got to write 3 hours of television every week, which is just a blast. And I basically will have, I don't know how to explain it. Like the way I try to, the best analogy I can describe what I do is I've got to put together a picture puzzle every week that is a piece of a bigger picture puzzle that goes for a month. That piece is a part of a bigger picture puzzle that goes for 3 months. That's a part of a bigger picture puzzle that goes for 6 months. It's part of a bigger picture puzzle that goes for a year. Yeah. I don't have a lid. I don't have edge pieces. Every wrestler is a piece. I have to have a vague idea of what picture the audience wants. I have to manage that one of my pieces got a bent corner and now doesn't fit where it needs to go, which now alters to some degree or another my picture that I was trying to make, that I thought was going to be the best one that the audience in unison would buy. Or I have to deal with the fact that I'm trying to make a white horse in a tall grass field surrounded by a wooden fence in front of a red barn. And for whatever reason, right now, I need you to be a hoof. And you don't want to be the hoof because you feel like you deserve and are entitled to be the mane flowing in the wind. That's exciting.
Like Fabius.
The hoof is not romantic. And now because you don't want to be the hoof, I can't have a 3-hoofed horse. I can't do that. So now I've got to make a pirate ship. And, I knew the audience was going to buy the horse. I'm not so confident about the pirate ship. And then while I'm making the pirate ship, one of the other pieces now got hurt, got his edge bent, and now he doesn't fit. And I can't make the pirate ship the way I want. I got to fix that. So that's basically what I do.
But let's just stay with the analogy. The horse that you think can win, that first week, maybe the two, people aren't necessarily taking to that.
It's not going to be a white horse. It's going to be a black horse.
Okay, what are the calculations where like, all right, let's give the audience time to marinate before you do a turn or maybe even pull them off? Yeah. What are the kind of things I look for? Like, okay, that didn't work versus, let this cook, let it simmer.
You just kind of go with your gut. And sometimes your puzzle pieces, they won't manifest. They won't be what you need them to be in the way you need them to be. And so they won't fit. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you got to change those pieces or you got to alter or move them around. And that happens a lot, especially on this level, because I have a lot of inexperienced performers that I have to guide and direct and shape into what I need them to be. More, even when they don't even realize I'm doing it. Because I have to read them, identify who they really deep down are without them realizing it, and then getting them to start expressing that out in public to now connect with the audience because they're believable. Mm-hmm. So they're selling who they really are without even really realizing it. With the aspect just turned way up, I just got to keep getting them to turn it up further.
Yeah.
Without them getting publicly embarrassed.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So I have two bigger kind of topics, and then I definitely want to let you skedaddle. But first, Jocelyn, I want to check if you had any questions in the holster real quick.
No, I'm just thinking, like, can you also come in and teach strategic storytelling?
I mean, this is being a network. Yeah, this podcast is a cover for a networking opportunity as well. I definitely encourage y'all to talk more because I hope everybody in the audience sees and gets how important this is, again, to understand specifically U.S. politics and then modern warfare. I think folks understanding professional wrestling is absolutely key. So even that good guy, bad guy dynamic, how to build that up and getting that kind of consent from the population. I think it's just so easy to do that. And talking about that in terms of politics, I'd love to hear at least how wrestling defines that person who just stay the hoof for now. They're like, no, I need to be that flowing mate. How?
Well, that's your parties. That's what the responsibility of your parties are to do.
Yeah.
They have a larger, of course, your politicians are no different than wrestling. They're all high maintenance, high neurotic, narcissistic. Listen, because I've been one for 43 years, so I know, self-involved, self-motivated, driven by insecurities.
So, can I count on your vote, or do I need to shove a box of White House M&Ms up your...
And you've got to manage them.
Yeah.
And you've got to have people at the helm. That's where your parties come in. They're the booker. And they don't think that they don't groom politicians just like we push wrestlers. And Hollywood does the same thing. The studios have done the same thing for decades as well. Mm-hmm. They use the same psychology. They even have their own gimmick. They literally created the gimmick at the time, back in the 30s and 40s, of a movie star. And, they remember that they had contracts. They controlled every aspect of those people's lives. Yeah. And they owned all of the magazines, and they still do. They own People in Us. Hollywood, the studios own those things. I mean, they, it's no accident. And what stories are, wow, what a shocking coincidence that here in about 6 months, Tom Cruise is going to come out with a movie. But People in Us and everybody, all of a sudden he starts appearing everywhere, subtly at first, and then more and more to put you in people's minds.
Tom, we've never seen you behave this way before.
I know.
Have you ever felt this way before?
And he's just plying the gimmick of movie star, because that way there's no guarantee. You liked Tom Cruise in Last Samurai, there's no guarantee you're going to like him in the next movie. And there's such a long period of time in between while we need to maintain him in the public eye in some manner, because you like that character. That's where wrestling and movies differ. I keep my character 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I'm more identifiable than Tom Cruise, because you see me on TV and you see me in the public, I'm the same guy. So, but Tom Cruise isn't the Last Samurai in public in an airport. So how do we keep the public involved? Well, we sell them the gimmick, the character of movie star. He lives a life that you don't live, and he's glamorous, and and here's who he's dating, and okay, to keep you interested. So now when you see he's got a new movie coming out, you're like, oh, I remember him, and yeah, I remember I liked that. Well, now I'm going to reinvest because I want that experience again, and because I've maintained him in my mind's eye as a celebrity, as a movie star. Now we have the term celebrity, which is basically a dumbed down version of movie star, and we can utilize it in the same way. And politicians do the same thing. We groom them, we put them, we help them as far as a party is concerned, Democratic or Republican, and have them run for a certain office that we feel confident that they're going to be able to get, and that they're going to appeal to that particular section of the public. And then we don't, and nationally, we don't really present them until we feel that they have a strong enough persona and character that we can press them into the public eye on a national level. And then we start having them run for greater and greater offices. You build them up.
And do you think there's qualities of what makes a backstage politician? Are there certain qualities that you see in terms of folks that you're like, okay, that was really good, and they seem to always get their way?
Yeah, because there are lots of both politicians and performers in all walks of life that if they were to totally rely on just their performance in front of the public eye, they wouldn't be in the public eye.
Yeah.
The reason they're in the public eye and why they get repeated opportunities to be in the public eye is that they're really, really good at the backstage maneuvering and timing and political maneuvering. And that's a skill all unto its own, and quite honestly, you're going to be better served sometimes to be more adept at that than you are in front of the camera.
What part, how would you describe the kayfabe of politics?
The kayfabe, well, you got to figure out the kayfabe of politics is, the kayfabe of anything is, what are we selling to the audience? What is it that we're getting them to emotionally buy? Now, kayfabe means we never violate that. Kayfabe in Hollywood is, we're going to spend millions of dollars on this production. Not we're going to do it because we're doing it. Let's say we're doing it in a Western timepiece. Well, we're going to invest the money so that we know what type of wallpaper would be on the walls. We know what type of curtains would be on the windows. We know what type of material or what the outfits would look like in that time period. And we're going to watch every detail. So when you go in that movie, there's never the slightest thing that you will notice that will give you pause to go, why is that? And take you out of that world.
Because
now you don't get that experience. And that's the same thing with everything publicly. Whenever you're trying to manipulate a mass, the key is to first create a sense of anonymity. The more anonymous you can create the mass audience, the easier they are to manipulate because they're not self-conscious and worried about what their neighbor will think of them if they go along with it. The second is to identify the two easiest emotions that are to manipulate on a mass scale, and those are anger and fear. Without a question or a doubt, those are the easiest, and we use them in wrestling all the time. So, hope and happiness don't drive the bus. Fear.
They don't sell. How
They don't
sad.
sell.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes we really.
Yeah, as long as you create enough fear or anger, they do.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but that's, but the key to that, the more you can create an anonymity, the more you'll be able to manipulate the emotions on a grander scale. The biggest challenge for me is not to go out in front of 75 or 100,000 people. That's easy. It's exciting, but quite honestly, it's not difficult to manipulate them, to make them think, feel, or believe whatever I want them to think, feel, or believe, and react the way I want them to react, because that's honestly what I do when I'm in the ring, is I watch and I listen and I feel and I sense, and I literally make people stand up, sit down, cry, laugh, beg, plead, whatever I want, when I want, the way I want, to the degree I want. And I've gotten really good at doing it. The hardest part for me is when I now don't go out in front of 60,000 people. I go out in front of 60 in a well-lit gymnasium. That's tough.
Wow.
Now,
like the stand-up comedian kind of.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. So now I got Fred in the audience looking at his neighbor Sam was looking across the way, and now he's self-conscious because if he gets excited and gets all worked up, Sam's going to make fun of him at the bar tomorrow. So, or at the grain elevator. So I've got to sit there and figure out a way to where I can connect and get them to so emotionally be involved that they forget that their neighbor can see them. And I create a sense of anonymity.
What do you think people, so, bringing it kind of back to warfare and how one of the things we hope to do, there's that word hope, is give people, skills or tools and things that they can practice. In this case, with, being able to identify when they're a mark, using terms, or when they're being manipulated. Is there anything that you think people can learn from wrestling or from your experience to have that filter?
I always look for the angles. In wrestling, when we book a story, we're going to tell a story. We're basically shooting an angle. The angle that you're never going to, even when you have a direct confrontation, you're never ever going to win going directly head to head with anything or anybody. So you're always wanting to look to shoot an angle. How are you going to duck underneath, slide side by side or around and come from the back? How are you going to do that? How are you going to shoot that angle? So you're never going to go straight on. You never draw water out of a dry pump. You always got to prime it. Mm-hmm. So, if I'm going to basically work you, this sounds terrible to say, but like if we're in the locker room and I want an idea, perception I want to become prevalent throughout the locker room in regards to how I'm regarded, how I'm looked at. Well, I'm not going to come right out and, hey, look, I'm so good. Wow, look at me. That's not going to work. I'm going to do a commercial because I'm going to get somebody else to now do the ad for me and somebody that you respect.
As a celebrity, I know all about stuff like science and politics. So trust me when I tell you who you should vote for.
So now I'm going to start to kind of prime the pump and I'm going to start to get over with this guy. I'm going to get him to start thinking and believing I am better than what I actually am. So that then when he has a conversation with you, who is the mover and the shaker, and the only reason I identified him and got in with him was because I knew he was already in with you and that you respected him. Okay? And trust me, the one thing about the wrestling business that's like every other business is it's a relationship business. Mm-hmm. So I see your relationship with him, and that guy's the guy that makes the decisions. I'm going to get over with you. And now he's going to have a favorable opinion of me, which now creates your perception of me. And now you have a favorable opinion of me. Now, I want this understood. When I first broke in the wrestling business, that's what I was taught. All right. Yeah. I was taught to work, to be a worker. Mm-hmm. I got really good at it. And then I developed a conscience and was like, I'm not doing that anymore. So what I just described to you, I don't really do. But I just don't do it anymore.
You have the story that's out there and then this quote unquote reality or this kind of real plan out there. But it sounds like what you're mentioning, not only are you working things of the folks in front of the camera, the marks, but behind you're using those same kind of skill sets of influence, depending on whatever your goal or if your goal is just what's best for business, whatever it is. But the influence is not only in front of the camera, but behind the camera as well.
That's why a lot of I have trained a lot of young performers that have went on to WWE. And WWE is incredibly, like the wrestling business, as far as any entertainment business is very competitive, but the wrestling business is ultra competitive. Very. Because think in terms of just numbers. If you add up the numbers, your odds are better that you could be a player in the NFL based on the numbers than the odds are that you will ever be on a main roster in WWE. Why? Think of the thousands of people around the world that all aspire to be one, a professional wrestler at all, that are two right now pursuing the career. And then three, think of the fact that there's only about 70 to 80 main roster spots in the WWE.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your percentage? You know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now let's think of all of the NFL teams. How many players? How many second team players? 8 reserves. You've got a better chance.
Yeah.
Now you're in WWE. What are the odds of you becoming the money guy, the draw? Because let me tell you something. You get 30 seconds of television time. There are at least 30 to 40 that are sitting back there watching the monitor going, why do you get 30 seconds of television time? I deserve that 30 seconds, and I'm now going to do whatever it takes to take that 30 seconds away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I tell guys all the time, don't let it be the destination. Be the fact that you're doing this as a living, be what you enjoy. Not that you just got to WWE, because I said you'll never be happy. I could pick up the phone right now and call any of the number of kids I've taught, and they'd spend 2 hours complaining to me about WWE. I'll be like, well, you should be happy. You're there. Well, you're not. And you know why? Because it's a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year job.
Mm-hmm.
You are playing chess and poker on the highest level with all of your locker room mates. You're playing it with all of the production crew, and you're playing it with the very people, the promotion that's hired you, so that you can get what you have, keep what you have, and then aspire to go even further. And then the higher you go up, the more you have to lose, the more the stress and pressure, and the more you have to think 2 steps ahead of everybody else all the time.
You also just described politics.
I mean, we've already talked about it front with your constituents. This is the best description all around that I've heard. Yeah.
So you always got to be 2 steps in front and always in control to whatever degree you feel you can be of that perception that then creates that reality.
We're definitely getting time now. Oh, man, like, I don't want to turn, in terms of just being totally respectful of your times, there's more I want to ask.
Oh, I'm enjoying it. You can keep going if you want. I apologize that I seem to be monopolizing the conversation.
Like, this is
exactly what we want.
This is exactly what we want to.
What do you think if people could take one most important lesson or the terminology from wrestling, just everyday people, what do you think would be most helpful?
In regard, like, personally, or
be it like information, including like misinformation or disinformation coming to them, or how folks may want influence and what their angle is. We're trying to find different ways to help people and identify them and maybe even defend, or there may be positive reasons, like to, I don't know, like clean up litter in your neighborhood to try to, influence people to kind of like get out and clean it up. So it could weigh in terms of this bigger unconventional warfare that we've been talking about on this show.
In that vein, you want to always 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
One, in order for it to work, you've got to, one, be 100% honest with yourself. What I mean by that is, because we all lie. We lie every day. Just don't lie to yourself. If you give money to a homeless person, why? Why did you give it to him? Oh, well, he needed it. Oh, well, I thought I would do good. No, you didn't. You gave it to him because, let's face it, deep down, it gave you a sense of something. It fulfilled some want, and that's why you did it. So just be honest about what the want is emotionally. And then that helps you identify when you know somebody is trying to determine what your emotional want is, so that it can then motivate you to do something. Because you, in order to the flip side of your question, in order to do that, you have to determine emotionally what they want. Really, what's the motivation? Why are they asking? What do you want me to pick up trash? Okay, what are you getting out of this? And nobody does something selflessly. I hate that sounds so pessimistic.
But
it just that's real reality. And that is that no one does something selflessly. When you get some kind of emotional payment for whatever it is you do. So what is it that you're wanting? If you're wanting me to pick up this trash, is it so that you get over with the HOA in the neighborhood? And if getting you over with the HOA, if I'm wanting now something out of that, how does that benefit me? I mean, that's really, if you want to, if you really wanted to live your life that way. But on a professional scale, if your job is to do those things, well, that's quite honestly, that's what you're doing, is you're trying to figure out what is it, because it's never about the material. It's always about the emotional, is what it is. You know, we go to war. We don't go to war for just causes. We go to war for other reasons. We don't even go to war anymore for, like we used to back in human history when we went to war, because it was like, hey, they got more food than us and they're eating better than us. Let's go over there and beat them up and take it. We don't do that anymore. We now do it for control. We do it for power. We do it for an emotional stability. We don't do it for any other reason. And nobody can convince you otherwise. Well, the more we are able to control something and the more power and influence we have, the more secure we feel in that position to keep it. And that's what that's our emotional want. That's what we're trying to get. And now if you're wanting to get ahead politically, well, then you're the person that they can turn to help fill that emotional want. But I sound like a terrible human being.
No, well,
This
to kind of like clarify with this show, because again, like one thing that it's almost a going joke at this point, but we've been mentioning that we may have a episode on socially acceptable assassinations, but that would, if we do something like that, it would not be to promote these things or this, but
well, no, of course not.
But like to look at the mechanics, and there's a lot of dishonesty when folks are like, no, it has no influence whatsoever. We're like, of course it can. Like we're seeing it, but so it's the dissection and looking at the mechanism. So that's why,
And you quite honestly have seen it on grand scales, especially politically.
Yeah,
you've seen it throughout history. I mean, think about it. Culturally, Japan and their leadership was able to convince, based on a credo, to have their citizens basically sacrifice themselves by flying a plane directly into an enemy and considering that to be honorable. And that if you didn't, that was dishonor that you brought to, not you, to your family. Which costs more, the dishonor to you, or does it cost more emotionally if you brought dishonor to your family? You know what I mean? To where you can manipulate that, to where you can get people to be that committed to things, you know. And those are just, you know, it's a reality of what it is that we're discussing. I do it for entertainment, and you know, and quite honestly, that's what I was taught to do, was to basically manipulate an audience's emotions, to tell them a story, to give them an experience, create, because that's the one unique thing that wrestling has over every other art form of storytelling, is that whether I'm going to do something just in that one singular event, that one match, that's going to take me minutes, or if it's going to take me months, or it's going to take me weeks of television, or it's going to take me whatever, I'm doing all of it to create just one moment, one singular moment that lasts anywhere from 3 seconds to 30 seconds to a minute. And all of that only is going to, that you can watch it on a broadcast, but if you're not there in the building with me, it's not going to be the same. You're not
like stand-up comedy.
Yeah, like stand-up comedy. Yes. Wrestling and stand-up comedy are very, very similar. I've done some stand-up comedy, and I've seen the similarities, because as a stand-up comic, you have to be honestly who you are. You have to be that, the audience has to believe in you. And you've got to sense, feel, and know how to manipulate an audience, timing-wise, pacing-wise, rhythm-wise, because just like in wrestling matches, even real fights, all have a pace, have a rhythm, have a role to them that you have to feel and sense. And wrestling is the same thing, and stand-up comedy is exactly the same thing. And that changes from audience to audience, because they're, you know, going to come in with a different experience every night. And you may play the same town, and you may play it 7 nights, but each night, even if it's the same audience, each night in the same venue, in the same town, they're going to have a different day and a different experience, and have a different preconceived emotion coming in, that is now you're going to have to sense and feel and know, because you never get anything by pushing. You always get by guiding.
Yeah.
You know? So the more subtle you can be, the more you make them think it's their idea to go that way.
Yeah.
The easier it is to get them there. I do sound like such a horrible person.
No. For everybody out there, you please, hell is not horrible. In fact, and I hope this is something, because when we talk about how to deal with this kind of warfare that we were talking about, we really do believe truly like a unity of effort for to try to get the U.S. kind of like number one in this space. Because I really do think, again, since World War II, we've won nearly every battle, but lost or stalemated every single war. It can't just be winning. The kinetic is how you win wars. So it's in the information space. It's in people's mind and these kind of like shared beliefs. And we're just trying to get the folks who understand that are going to be, at least in my world, just unexpected. And that would include professional wrestling. I hope everybody in terms of this episode can see again, like how someone with your know-how can really be helpful in that fight.
And I think it's the fact that you're so self-aware, right? It's like something we've talked about is, people who are like, well, can't we just ignore war, look away from it? What does it have to do with me?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of our whole belief, is that you can't escape it. It's everywhere. People are trying to manipulate you. They are trying to get into your head. They're trying to tap your fear and your emotion and like, your emotional need to get you to do something that is often not in your best interest. So I think it's really important to be real about that. And in your case, you're first of all sharing all of this stuff, I think, is super important. And you've been entertaining audiences. So it's like it's not mutually exclusive to be a good person and to understand these things that are so-called bad or negative. But that is just, it's part of the package of being a human in the world.
I agree. I think it exists, and to ignore it and putting some kind of moralistic value on it is the wrong approach, because it's still going to exist. It's still going to be there. It's a tool. Tools are independent, meaning that they're not good or bad. It's your use of the tool that's good or bad. Let's face it, a very handy tool to have is a hammer. You can construct things, you can, destruct things, but you can also murder people with it. It's your personal decision that you make as to how you use that tool. So people today blame social media. It's terrible. Social media is the devil. No, it's not. It's a tool. The reason social media is so popular, let's be honest, it's because everybody that uses social media uses it for the same motivation, which is to be relevant outside of your circle. That's it. And we all, as human beings, genetically are predisposed to be negative. And when we couple that with the sense of anonymity that social media gives us, then we're free to say stuff without a direct repercussion or price to be paid, and thus motivating us to be that negative side. And then utilizing it to give us a bigger and grander audience than what we typically have. And if you want to stop it, the best way to do that, in wrestling, again, in wrestling terminology, is if you say something negative about somebody, they'll say, "Oh, they're burying me." Or if you're having them create by their actions in front of an audience a negative, what we feel is a negative, like you're making me look weak, or you're beating me all the time, so you're burying me. And that's misused, because the term to bury somebody isn't what is actually occurring. When you acknowledge somebody says, "Oh, I don't like your hair," or "I don't like your glasses," and they say that on social media, they're hoping you react. They're wanting you to sell, with sell meaning to react.
Yeah.
Because they're in that, getting that reaction, and you now interacting with them. No longer are they just relevant to their audience, they're now relevant to yours. And they didn't bury you. What they actually did was they put you over. Because listen, I wasn't aware of who you were until you reacted with this person that I know. And now you've got my attention. So anytime I give you any kind of attention, positive or negative, I'm putting you over. I'm giving you an audience that allows you to sell yourself. If I want you to now no longer ever be a factor, I'm really going to bury you, which means I'm going to put you in the ground, throw dirt over top of you, and let's face it, no matter how much I love you, once you're dead, After a period of time, I don't talk about you anymore. Now you're really buried because you're forgotten. And that's the term. Is to bury somebody is not to speak negatively. It's to not speak about them at all. They don't exist. You know, that's just little Uncle Al's advice on social media.
What are you doing? I'm burying you. Let the dirt just shower over you.
Even I sometimes will occasionally, when I'll get some, because I'm in the public eye to some degree still, I'll get some negative remarks. Oh, there's that moment where I go, just want to respond. But I realize I was giving this guy what they want, which is acknowledgement from somebody else, and that now I've given them a much larger audience. I do have to admit, there were a few years ago where a guy was being upset with me on social media, and I kind of was like, oh. And so I started doing the old "your mom" jokes to him, and they became nuts. Like, me and my son sat there and come up with "your mom" response.
It's a team effort.
Oh yeah, it's
Family affair.
What started out him typing then became all capital letters, which I found out is him yelling every time he would say something. Your mom didn't think so. Oh, your mom liked it, and he'd freak out. It got more and more. It was so much fun. Very gratifying. Very cathartic.
Yeah. Core memory
like
with your kid. Yeah.
Weaponize your mom.
Not the weaponization.
That's what they're there for.
Oh my gosh. Is there anything you wanted to talk about, like projects you're working on now, or even shout out to your book?
Let the horn begin. Let's go. If anybody is interested in OVW, we do live television outside of WWE and AEW. We're the only other company that does live consecutive television every single week. We are the second longest running episodic weekly television show in the history of television, back behind Raw. Raw's number one, have more episodes than us. We got one more episode than SmackDown. Ha ha.
Keep ahead, one step ahead.
So if they want any information, they can go to ovwrestling.com. Hey, if you're emotionally broken and twisted, and like I am, and you want to become a professional wrestler, then you can go to ovwacademy.com. We are the only wrestling school in the world that is actually certified by the State Office of Proprietary Education as a trade school for professional wrestling, sports entertainment, and broadcasting. Pretty proud of that. If you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me at The Real Al Snow. I made that handle before the little handy dandy blue check marks, because there are some people that faked being me. And if you fake being me, I will simply message you and go, look, aim the bar higher. I mean, if I was a fake celebrity, it wouldn't be me. Hell, I don't even want to be me. So I'm with you. Come on. If you want my book, it's Self-Help Life Lessons from the Bizarre Wrestling Career of Al Snow. And trust me, it's quite bizarre. You can go to Amazon.com and you can find a lot of interesting stories in there. And I was very honest throughout the whole book about my mistakes and the lessons I've learned from those. And there are some good ones. I've got one that I always top everybody on. When you're talking about crazy exes, and they're like, oh, my ex is crazy. I mean, you don't have no idea. I go, really? I got involved in an extramarital affair, and she faked her own death, and I was under investigation for murder for 2 weeks. So, top that one.
Oh, dang.
That's
go get the book, everybody.
Yeah, that's a carrot. Go get that book. We'll make sure to link it in terms of the
Giddy up on that one. So when I say I've made mistakes, I make good ones. I've got great stories. If you want comic books, I've got comic books. You can go to brokeniconcomics.com. Fascinating books there. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
awesome.
And if you want to see, I star in a supernatural Western called Unnatural that is on Amazon, Apple Plus, Tubi right now. And then also a Christmas movie, Homeless for the Holidays. So on the same platforms as well. So watch Wrestlers on Netflix, the docuseries about OVW. That is still on Netflix, and you can check that out.
Very good.
Yeah. Not a very creative title, but Greg Whiteley, literally a genius. He and his crew, as far as storytelling, they made even me look pretty good. I look good, but I look even better in the dark. I mean, the darker it is.
Dark. Everybody looking good.
We all look good, Anonymous. Maybe not.
Oh my goodness gracious. All right. It's been a pleasure. Yeah. I hope if there's anything you want to reach out to, any questions you have, Sal, or just even kind of like feedback or whatever it is, don't like my haircut, I don't know. Feel free to reach out to us at madwarfarepodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, this is a good one. I feel like nothing else to mic drop on that.
Both of you, thank you very much for the time. And it's been very interesting.
Sal, thank you so much. And everybody out there, thank you so much for checking out. Until the next one, y'all. I'm Sean Guillory.
I'm Jocelyn Brady.
I'm Al Snow.
He's here. And take care, everybody.
I've come to talk with you again. Come and be inside my head. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you should cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you should cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you should cancel me. What you got to say? 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 Cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You should cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You should cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You should cancel me.